In our last episode, we were talking about animals, their wisdom, and the way they communicate with us. And today we will move into a different area, although in many ways it is still deeply connected to animals' communication. Being translator of animals' thoughts for humans, sad even in your life seem to expand this ability even further. I am talking about the death of your husband and your latest book, Talks with Bob, which, by the way, I would recommend to everybody. It is beautiful, it is very kind, a heartfelt conversation about death. And that is the topic I would love to explore with you today. Unfortunately, we live in a world where the territory of sadness, grief, confusion, emotional overwhelm, despair, all the emotions that accompany the death of loved one are still somewhat taboo or feared or uncomfortable for us. Why do you think that is?
Well, yeah, they're uncomfortable. I think as humans right now,
Mm,
we don't have a good framework for death.
mm,
We just kind of push it away and don't
mm.
want to think about it. I mean, it speaks to our own mortality, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that's probably the deep fear is talking about death brings that up for us. And there are so many heavy emotions that go with it, losing a spouse or a child, even a parent, a good friend, whoever it is, whoever we're connected
Mhm.
to. It brings all of this. Well, for me, it brought a lot of heaviness, the shock. My husband passed very quickly, very
Mm,
unexpectedly, and then that brings sadness. It shifts your entire world
mm,
because your foundation is completely, for me, my foundation completely disappeared. I didn't have it anymore. I didn't know who I was anymore.
mhm,
And that surprised me because I didn't think of myself necessarily, only in connection to him. But
mm,
I saw through the process how much that was part of who I was. So
mhm.
so I think that affects us as well because our world is necessarily shaken up and changes. It changes like that. Yeah.
When you speak about that, you had no idea who you are anymore.
Hmm.
I would go directly to question when we lose someone we deeply cared for, we loved, we lived for a long time with. Uh, it brings the question that what you said, you lose part of you and you keep asking, am I? Now, because part of me is lost. Is there a way to find ourselves again?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if now, and I'm speaking and am answering it now, having been
Mhm,
through this and kind of out the other side, is I don't know if we really lose ourselves. I think what we
mhm,
lose is an identification of ourselves,
mhm,
structure of ourselves. I was a wife, I was a this, I was a that, right? And that was an important part of our foundation of who we thought we were you
mhm,
know?
mhm,
So for me, the process was, yes, it was terrifying to lose that. And then I'm in emotional turmoil. Who am I? I don't know who I am. And na, 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 na. Um, but for me, the finding was
mhm,
really about going within. It was kind of what we talked about last time in our
mhm,
communication. It's about going within and realizing, oh, I'm a bigger self than I even knew, that
mhm,
my true self isn't confined to definitions.
mhm,
And yes, that's still a part of who I was, who I identified with,
mhm,
but I'm bigger than that. So in a way, for me, death was was certainly loss and despair and shock, but it was also expansion.
mhm,
It was also evolution of soul. It was an opening for me,
mhm.
huge. And I was, just really lucky to have a connection with my husband and to move through that with him. So,
So
yeah, it was a
death
unique
can,
situation. Mhm.
so death, what you're saying, death can teach us, right?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, big time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, what, Dawn, what is, based on the message from your husband, what is your perspective of how the afterlife looks like? Because you start talking after your husband left you, you start talking to him.
Right, right. Yeah.
What
So
is
we
your
started,
perspective? Because I think
yeah.
I'm curious about this.
Yeah, I was curious too. We started very just days after he passed, and I was kind of um, what I would do, and normally I would do this anyway because I really love working with dreams, is when I
Mhm.
wake up, I'll kind of just try to keep that space open between the dream world and the waking world and seeing what's there. And he was able to connect with me. I felt his presence very much there. And he began to talk with me and kind of share thoughts and share
Mhm.
images. And he was very quick to tell me that the afterlife is unique to each individual.
Mhm.
And he was in a specific realm, let's call it, of the afterlife. In the beginning, I didn't know this. I'm just saying this now to give perspective to people that he was kind of in this introductory realm that was both connected with the spirit world, with the afterlife, but also with the physical world. And I think
Mhm.
that's how he was able to talk to me, was because he was in this little bit of an in-between space, maybe where beings first come when they pass over, So it was that kind of a realm. And he shared so many stories about what he saw and what he felt and how he was evolving. Time was different. Um, Reality was certainly different, much more fluid, much more open, much more creative.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
through these conversations, the two of us began to form a bridge. That's what we called it, a bridge between the waking or the physical world and the afterlife world. You know, I won't even say the living and the dead because, as he would tell me, like, I'm not really dead. I'm still living. I just don't have a physical body, you
Different
know.
form, right?
Different form. Yeah, different form. Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
actually, a lot of near-death experiencers who come back will tell you the same thing. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah. I was just in a different state there for a while.
Mhm. In chapter 10, your husband says that he is tired. That
He's tired.
actually that's surprised me quite a lot because
Mhm.
in my experience, when I talk to animals that they left, they are usually joy, they feel joy and lightness. Tired spirit? Could
Yeah,
could you
I
could you
know.
share more about this? Because
Yeah, I was surprised too because my perception of the afterlife was just you would like, whew, you would know everything.
exactly
It would be
celebration, you
great.
know?
It would be fun, right? But Bob, and I think this is partly just who he was and
Hmm.
that he was at that introductory place realm. And he did go to other realms. He did go to places that were more open and more formless, let's say, right? But in that realm, we were walking together, he and I think we were helping each other evolve.
Hmm.
And I think part of what he was doing was kind of his work, his life review, if you
Hmm.
will, on that level. And he was working with, I want to say emotions, because that's the human word, the physical word. They were a little different there, but he was working with ways of seeing himself, of how he was in his physical world, the holds, the emotional holds and traumas and dramas that went on. And so I think that was work. I think just like here, it would be work. It would be like going through intense therapy or something, or, a big emotional thing. And if you're really doing the work, it's tiring. So you need time to sleep. So I think that's what that was. And as we go on, that was chapter 10, so that would have been the 10th day of his passing, which is still relatively soon. But as it goes on, he becomes much more expansive, and we don't talk of him being tired anymore. He's just sort of all present. So I
Okay,
think that was, a stage we could call it of where he
okay.
was. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it a minute ago, and it was one thing that kind of caught my attention. It seemed like you both went through kind of transformation, almost like you both were rediscovering yourself.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we're doing that. We were walking together in a
Hmm.
more conscious way. And I mean, I would poor Bob, I would bring him all my problems, like I'm so depressed, and he would help. He would help. And I mean, in the very beginning, that was the highlight of my day, was talking with Bob. That was, and then come 10 o'clock, I would wake up, I would get my coffee, I would talk with him, I would edit it, it would, just kind of, or just clean it up with spelling and
Mhm.
stuff. And then my day would begin, and I'd be in despair, heaviness, feeling the wet blanket of sorrow. And all I was thinking about was that I could go to bed so I could wake up again, right?
Mhm.
So that time period was very important for me, for my healing. And I think he used it too because, we had 33 years together. So
Mhm.
we knew each other pretty well. And we were both, I think, discovering about ourselves,
Mhm.
almost like we were helping each other. It wasn't like he was just my teacher. I was his teacher too. And it was going back and forth, and we were in it together. And again,
Mhm.
that's why we thought of it as a bridge, because we were kind of meeting in this middle place and allowing things to open up. And it was often, I mean, sometimes I had questions for him, specific, but more often than not, it was just, how are you doing? What's going on? And things would unfold. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there was a syncopated, type of evolvement there that was happening. Yeah.
When I'm listening to you, I wish that for anybody who loses their beloved, because it's such a beautiful way to heal and
Yeah.
to let go of the grief. Because we have
Yeah.
to go through grief, otherwise,
Yeah. Yeah.
it can be disaster for the rest of our lives.
Right.
But it's so beautiful.
Mm. Yes, thank you. And yes, I feel very grateful that he stuck around in that way
Yeah.
to help with that, and that we created this book, and maybe there'll be a couple more, I don't know, because there was a lot of talks. I'm still talking to him. So,
Hmm.
there's a lot there, and to be able to share that with people.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's not a how-to book, and I think we all would just open that to that in our own way. But I think part of the helpfulness of the book is to let people know that's possible.
Hmm.
Everyone can do this. We can
Yes.
all do this. It's just closing your eyes and allowing yourself to converse. And maybe you
Mhm.
don't hear anything right away, but you let your heart speak. You start to get it out. And the more you get it out and the less you judge, the more it comes back to you.
Mhm.
And it becomes a flow, it becomes a conversation or a song, or for some
Mhm.
people, maybe a painting, whatever it is, it comes out and reflects back to us what we need to know. Yeah.
Is there a difference between receiving messages from animals in spirit and from a human in spirit?
I don't think so. I think core level, it's just the same thing. It's
Hmm.
just conversing. We could get fancy and delineate So I remember I used to tell people in classes, like, talking with an individual animal is different than talking with an animal spirit and an animal guide. And then I realized you're just scaffolding. You're
Yeah,
just breaking it up for the intellect, which is fine. Sometimes our intellect needs that. But bottom line,
it's the
it's
same.
heart to heart. That's what you're doing. You're just
Yeah,
opening. Yeah.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
In your book, you describe the signs that your husband created for you, for example, the rainbow.
Yeah.
For many us, for many of us who are living in the physical world, it can be kind of difficult to believe these signs and know if it's real sign or if it's just
Right.
coincidence.
Right. Am I just making it up?
Exactly.
Am I interpreting? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How
Yeah.
the skeptic in us recognize
I
when
agree.
something is truly a sign.
I agree. I think you're so right, because I'm like that too. I have a big skeptic living inside of me. And I remember what you're speaking of is The third day after he passed, my daughter was like, "We have to get outside. We need to, you know." So we were walking around a lake and with our dogs, and it was really misty out, kind of rainy and cloudy. And I was with my dog, and I passed some trees, and I came out to the where the lake was. And the sun, again, the sun, like the
Mhm.
story I told last time, the sun came out and it hit me in a certain way where I saw all of these tiny little bubbles in the air, just very magical, like champagne bubbles. And I felt my husband there and right next to me, and he said, "I'm in your heart."
Mhm.
And it just resounded within me like, oh, I felt him. I mean, that I didn't need to question because I wasn't
Mhm.
even thinking about him. It just came out of the blue. And I called to my daughter. She came back and I go, I felt your dad. She goes, "I felt him here too."
Mhm.
So there was a confirmation right away. You know, I felt him too. And then the rainbow that you refer to, that was when we were on our way back. My husband was gonna be on this moose hunt that he did every year. It was a big deal for him. And we drove past the river where he was gonna park his truck. And I said to my daughter, "That's where your dad was gonna go in." And just as I said that, a rainbow came out.
Mhm.
And like it stretched from where he would have parked to us. And a part of me was like, oh, this, if this was fiction, I would not write this. It's so cheesy, right? It's so expected. But I'm like, Elias, could you see that? Do you see that? And, you know, we were both just kind of laughing, both in disbelief, but also a little bit giddy, like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, you know? And again, I heard him say, "I can do things like that now." And so over and over, a lot of times I would have animals that would just do something very unexpected, you know, that that animal wouldn't do. So, you know, I don't know. We can get into our definitions or not. You know, did I just make that story up to feel better? I don't know. The first one, "I'm in your heart," that became a theme and that felt so real to me. It, again, wasn't expected, right? And I wasn't really looking for these signs. They
Yes.
just
Yeah.
happened. So I
Yeah.
think that's also a good, you know, answer to our inner skeptic. It just happened, you know.
Mhm.
Why
Mhm.
was that the first thing I thought of? Oh, Bob's there. Bob's in that squirrel, you know. It just happened, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, the skeptic I think is useful for us, you know, so we don't get too far, too unanchored from
Mhm.
reality. But at the same time, sometimes you need to tell the skeptic, shh, you can talk
Go
later,
for coffee.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
From my observation, the messages you received from your husband seem kind of deeper and wider than the messages you received from animals before. Is that so, or is it just my observation?
I think, uh, I think there are animals that have received very deep
Mm-hmm.
communications from. Usually that's in an animal communication session, and one
Mm-hmm.
animal is coming in, so I wouldn't necessarily write about that. But certainly in the book, some of my other books, there are some deeper messages coming through from animal spirits or guides or whatever. But yeah, I think with Bob, in the very beginning of the book or the very beginning of our conversations, you know, he spoke just like he did in daily life. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he was kind of matter of fact. He was just kind of a, you know, a character. I mean, he's very Alaskan, right? So he was into fishing and hunting and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he just had his thing. This listening to this type of thing he wouldn't have done, right? He wouldn't listen
Mm-hmm.
to this type of thing. So that wasn't his jam. So, but as our conversations went on, I did notice him speaking differently,
Mm-hmm.
expansive. And he would say things like, "Well, I'm tapping into your brain. I'm using your words as a shorthand." And he did start to speak in a different way. And I think that was indicative of his expansion as a spirit and it's just drawing upon. So his messages then did become wiser, if you will, you
Mm-hmm.
know, more profound, more expansive. Yeah, so that shift definitely happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You write in the book, you write, love does not have to end with loss, which I
Mm,
love very much.
mm,
And so I understand the love is still there. It
mm,
just has different form.
yeah.
But how can we not get lost in it or become stuck only in the spiritual connection, because
Yeah,
we are in the grief. We want
yeah,
the beloved being
right,
back.
right.
And as you said, the only thing you were looking for was the time you spent with Bob.
Yeah,
And I believe
yeah,
for some people can happen that the only thing they want is to get in touch with the person they lost, how not to get lost, and how to get back in the joyful life, how to
yeah.
transform the grief into joy again.
I wish I had a quick little antidote for you, a magic bullet, but I will just say, in my experience, it is a rough road. It
Mhm.
just is. And we're, yeah, it's going within, it's dealing with that neediness that I mean, I was surprised at how needy I was. I wanted him here right back, right now, and I was focusing a lot on, oh, we did this fishing, and we always had so much fun. And I would look at photos and I'd be really missing him and
Mhm.
missing and almost torturing myself with like, oh, we'll never have that again. And
Mhm.
he and a friend, as a living friend, also said, maybe you need to reframe that,
Mhm.
right? So I went from saying I miss you, I miss you, I miss you countless times a day to I love you, I love
Mhm.
you. So bringing it into the present, bringing it into the love vibration, because I love you, I love you. So it was a gradual shift for me. But I will agree with you that that's very seductive to get caught in that neediness, and thinking that's you can't live without that person. I mean, that can be a very dark small place if you allow it to be. And that's one of the things that Bob and I talked about often was walking that road of, one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, really. And you're just, and I really did a lot of, I mean, it was almost as if all of my animal communication clients disappeared. I just
Mhm.
had open days, and I'm like, okay, the universe is telling me something. So I would sit with those emotions hours, basically throughout the day, not hours at a time, but, sitting with grief, sitting with depression. What does it feel like? It feels like a chasm. It feels like I'm empty. It feels cold, really feeling that in the body. And the
Mhm.
more you do that, the more I did that, the more I was able to let that go. It just
Mhm.
started releasing. Um, One thing Bob and I had talked about before when he was living, we were always of the opinion like, oh, what if I die? What should you do? And we had always agreed like, grieve and then get on with your life. You don't need to make the house a mausoleum of,
Yeah.
of your love, right? Get on with it. You're there for a reason. And I remember early on, Bob telling me, I'm going to help you because he knows I love partnership. He knows I love to be in relationship. And he said, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you find someone. So I think it is healthy to well, it's I think what's most healthy is to be aware of where we are. So
Mhm.
there is a time to be in that grief and in that sadness, and then there's a time to sit with it. And
Mhm.
then there's a time to maybe start expanding a little and never forcing yourself to do something to get out. I had a lot of friends, you gotta come out, have dinner. And like some days I was just like, I just want to be alone. I really do. And that was what was right for me. And other days, no, it's appropriate for me to go out. So I think every case is different. So whoever's
Mhm.
listening, if they have that going on, be true to yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah, take your own counsel, take your own guidance,
Mhm.
and it's going to last as long as it lasts. I remember a neighbor telling me, he was asking me, how many years were you married? 33. He goes, you're going to have to grieve for 33 months. And I go, I think that's bullshit. I just think that's bullshit. Like, why should I accept that belief? I was just at that moment in that time just
Mhm.
thinking, I've had enough of people telling me that, oh, grief never ends, or this happens, or that happens. And we all started laughing. There were a number of neighbors there. We all started laughing, and it's like we dissolved that curse,
Mhm.
That was a curse telling you, oh,
Yes.
you have to grieve that long. No, you'll grieve as long as you grieve, right? So as long as we're true to ourselves and what we feel, I think that's the best way to be, really, is to just be honest with yourself, and it will shift, it will shift. Yeah. Do the work.
Yeah,
That's my
but
advice. Do the work.
if I hear you, what I think is very important to talk about that people see that it is important to go through the process, not to
Yeah,
stay in the grief, because
right.
I I see a lot of people who kind of keep the grief for ages.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I've met people online. I had joined a lot of grief groups and met women and men who, 6, 8 years later, they're still not able to look at a photograph of their spouse, and they're still caught in that. And that was one of the reasons I really wanted to do this book and put it out there,
Mhm.
was because I don't think we need that.
Yeah.
Maybe you do. Maybe you need that. I don't know. I'm not going to judge. But I think there's another way. And I read a lot of grief books, and
Mhm.
I think, some of them offer helpful maps, but
Mhm.
some of them are also a little bit judgy about how
Mhm.
long we should grieve for this or that or the other. Everybody's unique. We're
Absolutely.
going to grieve for as long as we need to grieve. And I think the good news is it doesn't have to be years, you know. Yeah.
Did you ask Bob about it? Because I believe that the beloved who left us, they don't want us to grieve.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
no.
mean that they don't want us to grieve. That's wrong. I think they don't want us to stay in the grief for
Yeah, I
ages.
understand what you mean. That's exactly it. Yeah, grieve as appropriate. Bob and I had a big thing about shock, because shock also holds us,
Hmm.
that shock of somebody leaving that quickly,
Hmm.
and the grief and the loss, and it gets layered and it gets dense and it gets heavy. And sometimes we just give up. We're like, okay, I'm never going to have another relationship. It's just going to be like this. And that's just kind of giving up. And I don't think our beloved would want that.
Hmm.
I know that he didn't, but he was also very kind and understanding. He kind of, he would always say, "I'm in your heart," and I felt like he could feel what was in my
Hmm.
heart sometimes. And and he would always encourage a lightening of the heart, you know. So sometimes I would get out with friends, and then I would be shocked, like, oh, I'm having fun. And then there's a weird guilt that comes in, like, should I be feeling bad? And he'd be like, no, hell no, you should enjoy, right? Enjoy life. That's what it's for
Uh-huh.
here, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, again, it's different with everybody. I guess maybe if there's advice, it's to question how you're framing your grief.
Hmm.
How are you seeing your grief?
Hmm.
Um, and can you move to a larger window of perception,
Hmm.
one that lightens you up a little bit and helps you expand,
Hmm.
your thoughts, your heart, all of that.
If you could give some, I suppose, opinion for those who can't communicate with their beloved, they left them how to deal with the grief and how find the courage probably to continue their lives.
Yeah. Well, I think it's sort of what I've been saying so
Hmm.
far, is that, number one, let's just say we all can. Let's just say
Hmm.
that, okay, whether you
Yes.
believe it or not. And maybe you have a conversation with your beloved as if,
Hmm.
and maybe it's just one-sided to begin with. Maybe it's just
Hmm.
you saying what you need to say. Sometimes that's the opening. Sometimes we
Hmm.
just need permission to speak it out, right?
Yes.
And then maybe you do get an answer back, or maybe you do see a sign, the squirrel that reminds you of your husband, or a flower in your way, something happens. And you
Mhm.
just keep opening to possibility. That's a lot of what it is too. I think it's opening to possibility and letting that door be open for you.
Mhm.
And then the counter or the balance to that in the physical world, I really think is doing the work. Maybe it
Mhm.
means getting a good grief counselor. Maybe it means joining a grief group, online or in person. Maybe it's doing what I said before. You're closing your eyes and you're feeling that grief in your body. Where is it? What does it feel like? What
Mhm.
does it want to tell me?
Mhm.
That's a good one to do. What is it? What does that want to tell me? And open an inner dialogue. And that's
Mhm.
probably a great segue to talking to those in
Mhm.
spirit. Is just
Mhm.
open your inner dialogue
Mhm.
of what's going on. Take notes if you like. If you're
Mhm.
an artist, paint it. If you're a
Mhm.
dancer, dance it. Whatever way you have of expressing that, the more we kind of take that internalized angst and emotion and let it out, the lighter we become.
Mhm.
And that in itself is a wonderful journey, huh?
And what you said earlier, to be kind to ourselves and go step by
Mhm.
step.
Yeah, be really kind to yourself. Love yourself.
Mm.
Like, yeah, yeah. We're so hard on ourselves, aren't we, sometimes? I think we're our own worst critics, oftentimes. Oh, I shouldn't feel that, or I shouldn't, let that go of those shoulds and shouldn'ts. And you are what you are. And oh, isn't it beautiful that I'm crying right now? So it's kind of accepting who we are and where we are.
And there's one question that came to my mind is feeling guilty. You mentioned it. And I see that quite often that people feel guilty for continue their life. Is there some way how to heal?
Yeah, it wasn't really a lot of my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt like guilt is one of those emotions that just doesn't do much for us.
Mm-hmm.
So when I felt that little brush of guilt, like, oh, I'm having a good time and my husband is dead, well, that is his journey and this is my journey, right? What is there to be guilty about? Really
Mm-hmm.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that I'm the best person to answer that, but
I
definitely
understand.
the presence of guilt, I think, is the presence of conflicted emotions inside.
Yeah. And
So
I
how do
agree
you heal
that
that?
and I keep saying people that does it help you or the one who left you, does it help to be guilty? It doesn't
Yeah,
help, yeah.
right, right.
So to find something to celebrate or to something to
Yeah,
appreciate might be the
yeah,
way.
yeah. And to ask yourselves, wouldn't my husband or wife want me to be happy? It's that
Mhm.
question too,
Mhm.
because I think in most cases the answer is yes.
And
Yes.
I believe it is the same with animals because my experience is
Hmm.
that when I talk to animals in the spirit, and people ask them, do they want me to, do they want to tell me something? Most of the time it is be happy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. My experience as well. Be happy, live your life.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Joy.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and oftentimes too, animals just they're in spirit world, they're supporting us,
Mhm.
they're on our side. They're our champions. They want
Mhm.
us to
Mhm.
to do well and to be well, to be happy. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing all this, in fact, intimate experience.
Mhm.
Are there any last words that you would like to share with our audience?
It's actually funny because you asked this question for the last interview, and my answer is going to be very similar
Uh-huh.
because whenever I'm kind of in a funky mood and I talk
Uh-huh.
to Bob, and what he tells me is trust,
Mm-hmm.
trust life, trust more than anything else, love.
Mm-hmm.
Trust yourself, let yourself flow, let yourself be open, but most of all, trust love.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dor, for sharing our conversation with your conversation with Bob,
Hmm.
and for reminding us that love continues.
Yeah,
even beyond what we call death.
exactly.
Thank you. And I
Yeah,
wish you all the best.
as I do to you and to everyone listening. All right.
Okay.